Can you load them into the chat, Don? Don, can you load them into the chat?
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to our February edition of the Christian Business Board's virtual leadership event. We are just so grateful to have Jackie Stroh with us tonight, and we are so pleased to be able to continue to offer these events. This is the current one in a long series of events here over the past couple of years, and we are just so happy to be able to offer these as a resource to people who want to grow their skills, their abilities as professionals in the workplace and glorify God while they're doing it. That's why the Christian Business Board exists, and that is exactly why we hold these events, to be able to enable Christians wherever they're walking with God in their businesses, in their professional roles, in their ministries, in their nonprofits, wherever they are. We want to lift you up and be able to enable you to just be a valuable instrument of God no matter where you find yourself. And tonight we're just so pleased to have Jackie here. I will introduce her in just a second. But before we do that, I just want to open us up with a word of prayer here. Father God, we just are grateful for this time tonight, and we just thank you for allowing us to come together and to be able to share these important ideas. We thank you for Jackie's skills, experience, and willingness to share what she knows with us. And we just pray that you'll bless this entire event, that you'll watch over our technology and have it work flawlessly, and that you'll just anoint Jackie with a special word that people will just appreciate and be able to use wherever they found themselves. So we just turn this time over to you, and pray that your Holy Spirit will just open our hearts and minds to the message that we're about to receive from Jackie. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Jackie is a dear sister in Christ, and she has a long history of experience as a human resource professional. She has worked in a variety of different industries, in banking, in healthcare, in let's see, where else? We got a list here, in industry and in nonprofits. She's worked at the Center for Executive Development at the University of Buffalo. She's worked in the Canisius College Women's Business Center, and also at the Cornell School of Industrial and Labor Relations. She is currently the founder and president of Clarion Call LLC, and is practicing currently as a consultant and a coach in management, leadership development, and team building. She does one-on-one coaching, and also will work to prevent conflict inside organizations and with individuals. Jackie holds an MBA from Canisius College and a BA in psychology and speech communication from the University at Buffalo. She currently resides in Angola, New York, and has one adult daughter who is just a sweetheart. She's helped me many times as well, her daughter Claire. So we're just grateful to have you with us tonight, Jackie, and we're looking forward to your message tonight. So please take it away. I will share your screen, your handout here. It's going to be tough to see the whole thing at once. So let's see. I am going to have to bow out here. Art, can you share the screen? Do you have the document handy?
Yeah, let me
Can you
go
just
ahead and
kind of
call
share
that.
the screen and manipulate it for Jackie as she walks through?
Sure.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Hold on one second. Oh, I can't share at the moment. So Don, I think if you can open up the ability for others to share on the security button there. Don, are you able to open up sharing?
Yeah, I'm having the same problem here.
Yeah, I just did it. You should be.
Oh,
able
okay.
to-
There we go. Yep. Yep.
Make a co-host there. Art. There you go.
All right. So you see
Jackie,
my,
if you can just prompt
my
Art
cursor there?
to move around as you would like him to. That would be excellent.
Okay.
Thanks, Art.
Mhm.
Thank you. I guess we're ready to go. Yes? Ready to go?
Yep.
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Bob, and the leadership of the Christian Business Board for inviting me to be with you tonight. I enjoy giving this particular presentation very much because it keeps me accountable to myself and to the Lord. I love doing this particular presentation with a Christian audience because I feel like I can bring all of my best self to work when I'm doing that, working with Christian brothers and sisters, and also to be able to incorporate scripture into this as we go. So what you are looking at on this first page, there's 3 pages total. Let me also introduce this by saying we know that given time constraints, we certainly will not get through all of 3 pages as working documents. However, I will make sure to let you know how those other handouts can best be utilized. And you, of course, can always contact me after that anytime. So the first thing that we're looking at is personal goal setting and why it's important for us to set goals, and to talk a little bit about what derails us and how we can sometimes restructure our thinking to get back on track. So we are told in Ephesians to redeem the time, and that is a primary reason why we set goals. We were all created with a purpose, and the more diligent that we can be in seeking the Lord to stay on that purpose, the more fulfilling we are going to be in our own life, but also the opportunity to glorify God is maximized. So one tool that we have for that is personal goal setting. What are some of the reasons that goals are so important? And I fully realize that I am talking to long experienced professionals in most cases, but I think tonight's going to be a good time to just take a breath and have a refresher and say, where am I with moving forward? So the first reason is that goals, and we can define a goal as a desired state, something that we believe is going to make life better or different or increase our capacity to contribute to the kingdom. So the first one is separating our past, present, and future. I love the verse in Luke 9:62 that says, anyone who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for service in the kingdom of heaven. And I think the Lord is trying to tell us that the past is helpful, but it is not a compass. It is not to set our direction. The past is something that we can learn from, but it is not to set our direction. Past, present, and future. So in setting goals, we're concentrating on the future and then also looking very clearly at the present and how are our choices in this present going to help us move toward that future. Another reason is putting our personal mission into action. Many of us who are on this call are probably consultants and have done strategic planning work. And when we listen to people long enough, we know the format to write a mission statement, and we can do that. But it's not just the words on the page or the words on the visual hanging in a corporate lobby. But when we think about goals and put the necessary thought and time, money, and energy that is going to put needed to put these goals into action, it's more than just words. We're saying we're making a commitment here of resources and of our very life. Minimizing our feelings of regret. I happen to personally love this one because as I get older, I certainly am much more aware that I want every single day to count. Having goals minimizes feelings of regret. It doesn't eliminate them. I'm sure that I will still do some things that I may regret, but when I am living with goals in mind, I think there will be fewer regrets because of the intentionality with which goals provide us. I'm going to stop at the end of each of these sections to open it up for questions along the way. The next one is reinforcing accountability. I believe that this accountability needs to be primarily to ourselves. And before we're setting these goals, we're seeking the Lord in prayer. And even if we don't immediately share them, it starts out by saying, yes, I said I would. I'm making a commitment to fulfill the call that I believe I'm being given. The last one is clarifying values. This can be very hard when we have to admit that some things are more important than others at certain seasons in our lives. There is, I mean, our values, I know our core values do not change, nor should they over the course of our lifetime. But in clarifying values, we are going to say that manifestation of those values is going to look a little different at different seasons in our lives. So we're going to have to make some choices on how those values are going to be manifested. What are the things that we are going to make priority at this particular time in life? So I want to stop at the end of each section rather than waiting until the end and just ask if anyone has any feedback, comments, questions, or one of my favorite open-ended teasers to use in a workshop setting. And here we are tonight, cozy, comfy in our respective places, or for those that will watch eventually online, to just ask the question, did any of this hit home for you? I won't linger long, but I do like to put it out there and allow a little breathing space for us all.
Well, I like the I like the clarify values piece of it. Not just, I guess I'm thinking for myself, I know I've got a lot of things going on. And so I think that when you can lay out some goals, it can help you with what to focus on and what is not so important to focus on. Like, it's not just what's included, but what is less important, so that you can really
Yes.
focus on the main things,
Yes.
things that line up to your values.
Yes. There's a wonderful verse in Daniel 2 that says God changes times and seasons. Oh boy, does he.
Yeah,
And
that's
when
for
those
sure.
times and seasons change, we need to not be on automatic. We need to be thoughtful and intentional about how those seasons change and what that looks like. Anyone else? Okay. Don, if you wouldn't mind moving up here. Thank you. Thank you. So next, I'd like to share some things that derail our goals. Excuse me. What are those things that can get in the way or get us off track or introduce too much doubt and disillusionment so that we give up? We just don't want that to happen. I'd like to talk about shame and blame as kind of cousins, or both are two sides of a coin. Shame is when we are carrying things, and this is why I love doing this in a Christian setting, that we have long been forgiven for. So when we are operating out of shame, it's still holding on to things that Jesus has said, I have forgotten them, and I wish you would too. They're not helping you. So shame is looking inward, and blame is when we're looking outward. And we are not able to forgive or not able to put in perspective the role that someone else may have played in a situation or a disappointment. So shame and blame, they don't help. Codependency. Bob has read a little bit about my background, and I want you all to know that when I use the following definition of codependency, that I've checked it out with my NFL approved therapist friends. So for a working definition of codependency, I use basing my decisions. When I'm behaving codependently, I am basing my decisions on someone else's potential reaction. Sometimes the reaction is fairly accurate or predictable, and it's not what we are to base our actions on. We have the leading and calling of the Holy Spirit to give us our green lights, and to be codependent is to overly depend on man and not the Holy Spirit. Unresolved grief. I am very grateful that there is no schedule for grieving. Unresolved grief is when even we know personally that we are becoming immobilized by our grief and that we're not able to move on. So I'm certainly assuming that everyone listening to this at any point in time would have by now lost something very dear to them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a person. It could be a thing, it could be a place, it could be lots of things. But unresolved grief is when I know that I'm stuck and I probably need some help to move on. Following an inappropriate leader. This one's always lots of fun to do, especially in a corporate setting when people are sitting next to their boss in the room. Following an inappropriate leader, everybody gets a little nervous, like, why are we paying her to say this? What is an inappropriate leader? An inappropriate leader is someone whose values I do not respect. So for me, an inappropriate leader would be following someone whose values I do not respect. That's a huge cause for pause. And it also begs the conversation that within an organization, technically, there are no values differences. Isn't that what we tell people when we write a mission statement? These are joint values. These are shared values. But in reality, our behaviors do not always exhibit those shared values. And when we know that we are following a leader whose values we do not respect, that is definitely going to cause us some what we used to call in Psych 101 cognitive dissonance. This is not a situation where we want to remain. Perfectionism. This one's always fun to ask for a silent show of hands. Perfectionism. There is a huge difference between perfectionism and excellence. And one of the ways I can demonstrate this is with just a little hand gestures here. I'll try to keep them high enough onto the screen where people can
stop
see
sharing
them.
for a second. There you go.
Okay. So this is the goal setting process for the perfectionist. So here's the goal, all well and good so far. And as the person nears the goal, whoop, and then the person sets a new and different goal and they get kind of close to it and boop. You got the picture, right? I don't need to do any more boops. All right, we're good. Back to screen one. What happens is that the perfectionist is never satisfied. So a goal is actually never achieved. Perfectionists always drive the people around them absolutely crazy because in that constant striving, that intensity is almost too much for people around them to bear. They're never satisfied. They can't relax. They can't feel fulfilled or accomplished. It's very frustrating for the people around them. Excellence is truly being able to lay our head on the pillow at night saying, I worked really hard today, and Lord, thank you for empowering me to do a really good job. Not a perfect job, but a good job. And I'm going to get up to tomorrow and do it all again. So those are some things that derail us. Let me just pause again and ask if anyone would like to share anything, comments, questions, insights.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a lot of the things you were just talking about, starting with blame and shame, that, a lot of those things, which sounds like even the leadership, things that come at you, whether it's your mind, other people put in your mind, different leaders, grief, it's not being able to get over grief. They're all areas where, they kind of cause confusion and, obviously take your focus off your goals. And I think that's why it's so important as a Christian that we focus our relationship on the Lord and really, gain our strength. Like that one of my favorite scriptures is God's power is made perfect in our weakness. And, because we're all going to go through all those challenges. And the key is that I don't think we can keep focusing on our goals unless we have that ability to stay focused on the Lord to, get us through all of that, which can definitely derail our goals or at least sidetrack us,
Yes,
So,
these are truly human conditions, right?
right.
Shame and blame and codependency, being overly concerned about what people think about us rather than finding our self-esteem in Christ. We're all going to go through grief.
Right.
There's no grief when we don't love, and Christians love, and sometimes it can hurt. Losses are very hard. Takes us a while sometimes to identify that someone's an inappropriate leader. You know, we'd like to think the best and put trust out there. And it may take us a while to admit that we're following a leader whose values we don't respect. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone?
I just have a quick comment on the perfectionism part too, because I think we can get, analysis paralysis and things like that, especially if somebody tends to be more analytical to begin with.
Yes.
So many, many years ago, when I was running teams, I co-opted the age-old expression of KISS, which typically is keep it simple, stupid, as in a derogatory thing like, duh, keep it simple, right? But I changed it to keep it simple and successful. In other words, do as much as needed without overcomplicating it. And I have to constantly remind myself of that, because I would tend to be one of those who the goal keeps bumping up like that. And
Mhm.
there's a point at which you have to say what we have is good, and then you move forward and learn from that as
Yes.
well.
Yes. When you mentioned about being over analytical, there are times when if I'm trying to get someone to soften that approach, to just say the window of opportunity is closing.
Yeah, there you go.
We really don't want to slam it on our fingers here, do we?
Yeah, a perfect answer too late is much less effective than a answer that allows us to move forward with some amount of
That's a great one. I had not
progress.
heard that, Art. I'll be quoting you on that one. Anyone else? Okay, how about if we move on then? Challenging any unproductive paradigms. So a paradigm is what we believe. It's a mental model. And sometimes we're believing stuff that isn't helping us move forward toward our goals. And here's a handful of them. I'll move through them and again, ask you for any comments or additions. It is, Joyce Meyer has that word picture for us when she talks about the rocking chair, and how when we're sitting in a rocking chair, we have lots of movement and we can deceive ourselves into thinking we're actually going somewhere or making some progress just because we're moving. So an unproductive paradigm is believing something that we think is moving us forward, but in actuality, it is not. So what are some things that we believe that are unproductive or could be unproductive? And the first one that we see here is that roles cannot be challenged. It's unproductive to believe that. Often someone will take over a position that maybe someone has had for many years or was a larger than life personality, and we might step into a role and assume that that role can't be challenged. And when I say challenged, I don't mean, hands on my hips, stubborn, I'm right, the other person was all wrong. I'm just saying that sometimes we move very hesitantly and we don't trust those gifts and talents that we have been given. So I think it's very appropriate to challenge roles or to be open to redefining them. We have to remember, especially in appointed positions or when we're a new hire on a team or in an organization, people have seen something in us that they want us to bring to the role. And the better and different that we bring is exactly what we're expected to bring. So we don't want to hesitate to be who we are and not to fall into believing that we need to be the last person in that role. Another one is believing it's okay if I don't, ... I left that open-ended intentionally because sometimes we're telling ourselves that something is okay and it is not okay. I call this management by stomach. Or sometimes, I don't know where y'all get your stress, is it the back of your neck or your lower back, or where do you get your stress? But sometimes when we are saying that something's okay when it isn't, our body is screaming, you're lying. We're not screaming it out to the world, but we know that what we're saying is not true and something may not be okay. And we need to step back and think about that. Another unproductive paradigm is, and Art, this goes back to what you were just saying, is that even more information is needed. Sometimes there is no more information that's going to be available within a reasonable amount of time, or we admit that we could come back tomorrow and go around this mountain. There are times when we need to look around the table at decision makers or the teammates, and we need to trust that all of their competency has been brought to the table and that we are very well positioned to make a very good decision with what we have. My work ethic. So my is in quotes because I think it's important that we are always challenging, am I working in this season of life the way I should be working? I personally not living up. Let's just go back to maybe people who are new in the workplace as an example. They haven't quite developed their own work ethic yet. Some people were raised by parents who were maybe not very productive or fruitful at all, and other people may have been raised by workaholics. And it's just very important for us to be thinking about what is appropriate for me in this season of life. The ethics part is not what's really changing. It's just the intensity, the amount of hours that we can dedicate if travel is even appropriate. I know that even with being able to work remotely, that has its own set of challenges, and people believing that they can just do even more because they're not using that travel time. Just need to be aware of what season of life we're in. This next one, believing that exclusively affirming feedback sources are helpful. This certainly is not true. If we really want to learn and grow, it does us absolutely no good to only ask people who will tell us what we want to hear. There will be no growth through that. I always think about how on a Friday night after work, when you want to go out for a fish fry, you're not looking for feedback. You really don't want anybody talking about anything hot and heavy. You just want to be able to enjoy your fish fry. So if we truly want feedback because we are trying to learn and grow, it is so important that we ask people who we trust will tell us the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. If we only want affirming, then go out with your friends on Friday for a fish fry and say, please tell me how wonderful I am. I've had a hard week, and they can provide that for you, but that's not going to help you grow. This next one, if you can envision bookends, on the one end might be an insurmountable competency gap, and all the way on the other side is I have no competency gaps. Neither one of those is true. We can learn what's needed to be learned within reason. I realize that there are things I would never be able to learn because of the way my brain works versus someone else's. But to be able to learn the things I need to learn in the areas where I was called, it's unproductive to believe that my competency gaps are insurmountable. They are not. God will help me, and He will send the appropriate coaches and mentors for me to learn what I need to. It is unproductive also to believe that I have no competency gaps. I always say, ask anyone that's lived or worked with you for 3 months. They'll tell you where your competency gaps are. We're not always aware of them, but that's really where our teammates can be extremely helpful. And that's why we do performance reviews and we ask people for balanced feedback, because most of us do have competency gaps and we can overcome them. The next one, I shouldn't need to change. This is when we're digging in our heels and we're kind of in a gridlock in a relationship. Y'all know the expression, you could die waiting for someone else to change. Anybody ever heard that one?
Mhm.
That's what this one is about. Because while we're waiting for other people to change, there may be any number of things that we can do to adjust, to change, to learn, to grow. And all we control is our own behavior and our own mindsets. This next one, what if they knew? Sometimes we are carrying secrets that are burdening us to the point of making us unproductive. And there are sometimes ways and being discreet that we can share things that are burdening us, that once we have shared them, we realize that they're not they were not as big and hairy as we thought they were. What if they knew? We absolutely need to be discreet. But as an example, somebody may need coaching in an area desperately, and they are so concerned about going to their manager or their mentors to say, I think you think I know how to do this, and I really don't. Could you please help me? most people are extremely forgiving and helpful of humble people, but to behave as if we know something when we don't is very stressful. Let's move on to this next one. It is very unproductive to believe, again, we have these two bookends. On the one end, it's very unproductive to believe that boundaries cannot change. And over here, it's very unproductive to believe that boundaries aren't needed. Neither of these are true. Boundaries are needed and boundaries can change. This is a whole half-hour conversation, so I'm really going to kind of have to shorten this one up, but certainly leave it open for discussion and questions if someone wants to pursue this one a little more intently. We are told in Proverbs to guard our heart, and I think that that is the basis of boundaries. Guard our heart. What are those things that we are to allow, the things that we are to not allow? It is naive to believe that we do not need to guard our heart. If we didn't need to do that, God would not have commanded us to do it. Also very naive and limiting to believe that once a boundary has been in place, that it cannot be released. It can be released. Boundaries are not in cement. They are lines or limits that we set in response to inappropriate behavior, and we are guarding our heart. But that does not mean that that boundary cannot go away at an appropriate time. So here are a bunch of things to think about that we sometimes believe that don't get us anywhere, and definitely going to impede us from moving forward if we don't deal with them. So let me take a little time and open this up to any input, comments, questions.
I don't know if you specifically referenced this or not, but this really calls to mind the armor of God, right? In terms of Ephesians 6:10-18. And a lot of the things you're talking about are all about that in terms of the belt of truth buckled around the waist, the breastplate of righteousness, and the shield of faith, and then the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit. So I think a lot of these things speak to that as far as the way that we are equipped and the way we should use that armor in the proper way to mutual advantage.
Yes. Yes. Keep us healthy, right? Healthy and wise,
Yeah.
and wealthy in soul.
The other quick comment is, since I work a lot with sales teams, I tend to look at things through a sales perspective. And I know one of the things that a lot of times salespeople struggle with is the one about exclusively affirming feedback sources, because a lot of times in sales, you tend to gravitate toward the people that want to hear your story or make you feel good or whatever, but they're not necessarily the main decision makers or whatever. They may not be the ones that are the most important role, which is another piece of what you talked about there. So I think it's important not to just, we call it happy ears. It's important not to just have the happy ears, because that can mislead you. And sometimes you got to face the tougher conversations in order to find the people that are really going to benefit the most.
Yes. Yeah. We all like to be affirmed. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the word even says, let another man praise you. We're not to necessarily seek it. But when I'm training managers or leaders, I remind them that it is okay to ask for feedback. You may never get it from certain people unless you ask. And if you do ask, you still may not get it because they need to believe that you want it.
Right.
And that you might do something with it. I think those are pretty well the two criteria before anyone would risk giving their opinion. But it is important when we ask for feedback that we ask for balanced feedback. So the recommended method, I believe, is to say to your teammates or to your employees, if you happen to be a leader on that team, share with me some things that I'm doing well that help you be productive in your job. And also, would you share some things with me that you believe I could be doing better or different? And when you ask that question sort of all in one long sentence, the person is free to give you both kinds of feedback. So I think we do need to ask for feedback. There are people whose feedback we really value, and they may not be particularly assertive in giving it. So I think we need to ask, and they may give it to us.
But you're right, just the mere fact that a leader says, I want feedback, that speaks volumes to the atmosphere and the openness of the collaboration that can happen.
Yes, and
Uh,
it proves that I believe that I have competency gaps and that they're not insurmountable, and that you could be a person that would help me identify them and move
Mhm.
around them.
I think most people with the right character, that you would go to and ask, I I think they would be honored to help you out because that's why they are where they are, right? So the right people are always willing to fill those gaps, if they know you're honestly willing to change, or if if that's why you're going to them. So,
I agree. I'm thinking of your organization as an example. When I've talked to Bob, or I've talked to Linda about the benefits of CBB as an example, to be able to, in a trusting environment, ask an honest question and get an honest answer. We do need people that we can trust to be able to share our vulnerabilities with, and to be able to know that we're safe in doing that. We're wise not to do that with just anyone. We need to do it where we know people care enough about us to tell us the truth, and to do
actually,
it in a kind way.
yeah, actually, that's probably one of the greatest benefits of why I joined and stuck around, because I always feel comfortable with this team of people coming with things that's sometimes, you just can't bring to anybody. Like, you got to bring it to a safe place where people, they're strong Christians, and they're already in leadership roles, and that they have your best interest. So it's been really, Christian Business Board has been just an awesome place for that. And this, and your talk is right in line with what, we're all about.
Great. Well, when we look at this page as a whole, okay, we're just reminded that God doesn't want us moving forward, and that we need to be honest about those things that are going to keep us stuck either in the present or in the past, and that we do have help available to us. The Holy Spirit is so good at keeping us honest. He's so gentle and so good about keeping us honest. And when something isn't working, to repeat it. I don't need to repeat the definition of insanity. That's, we've been there, and we got that one down pretty good. But sometimes we are stuck and we need a friend to come alongside and say, let's try something else. But a lot of this, this whole page to me, is very much under the umbrella of seeking God for our created purpose, always moving forward, and taking stock of the current season of life that we are in, and what needs to change, what needs to stay, and what help do I need, and to trust God to provide those people that we can trust and get the feedback that we need to keep moving. Anything else on this? Okay, so Don, maybe we could go to that next page. This is a goal indicator self-assessment. I use this with all kinds of teams. Don, is the whole, could it show, at least not on my screen, can we show the whole thing? As long as we keep, can everyone see that well enough? You good to go? I'm going to explain it. Okay, thank you. That's perfect. So, having talked about goals and people seeing the value in them, this is now an assessment that each of us can do that would help us indicate where are goals needed, what are the life variables, and I'm going to read them down the left side. These are not all inclusive, but they're one way, I guess, to compartmentalize the big pieces of our lives. The first one is our health. That's our personal health. Our physical health is what we're talking about there. Our family relationships. The third one is the area of finances and wisdom and being a steward. The next one is our social life, our friendships, our ability to get some rest and rejuvenation. The next one is our spiritual life, our relationship with the Lord and things that are in our heart of hearts. The next one is mental, emotional, which I guess most of us would equate to our soul health. And welcome, Bob. The next one is our career. So even though we don't separate these neatly and cleanly, our career would be the work that we believe that we've been called to do. The work team would be those people that we work most closely with on a regular basis. So for consultants, those might be your friends in the Christian Business Board. If you're doing a project together, if you're working an inside organization, it would be those people that you deal with, day in and day out. They're the people that you have common goals with, that you share feedback with, that you share accomplishments with. You'll see a blank box at the bottom because maybe some of you right now have something major going on that doesn't fit cleanly into any of these. I guess for me, I could put in that box right now the renovation of my home so I can get back there at some point. That's a pretty big compartment for me right now. So down the left side of this chart, you see these life variables. I'm going to talk about the rating up at the top now. So on this particular assessment, we're using a scale of 1 to 4. I guess we've all been trained, right, not to use odd numbered scales so that people can't wimp out and just go down the middle and say everything is fine, fine, fine. We're going to need to decide which end of this continuum we're on. When I am doing this goal indicator self-assessment with brothers and sisters in the Lord, I like to change this question from a rating scale of number 1 being not at all satisfied, whether it's health, family, financial, or whatever, all the way up to number 4, which would be satisfied. On a scale of 1 to 4, instead of asking the degree of my personal satisfaction, I'd like to just offer a different question tonight, and that would be, to what extent do I believe that I am glorifying God in this particular area of my life? So I'm going to repeat that. On a scale of 1 to 4, to what extent do I believe that I'm glorifying God in this particular life variable? So in my health, family, finances, social, spiritual, mental, emotional, career, work team, house renovation, to what extent do I believe I'm glorifying God? So when we have a chance to pray through some of these, and this is very personal, I'm not as concerned about what number we might check. And by the way, I always have people say to me, can I put down, 3.7? Can I put down 1.8? And I tell them, you can put down anything you want as long as you're honest. It's not the number. It's just saying, where am I in this process? Where am I in the process of glorifying God in that area of my life? This is a real excellent prayer prompt, if you want to call it that, to be able to say, Lord, where are we okay and where are we not okay? What have I been avoiding? What have I been paying too much attention to at the expense of something else? Where am I on a path that if I continue, it's going to not look too good? I do want to mention that everything that we see down the left-hand side of the chart, none of these maintain themselves. And we have to take personal responsibility for each and every one of them. So no matter how great of a spouse you might have, or how great of a work team, or how great of a support system you might have, we are accountable personally before the Lord for each of these variables. So 2 things about the variables themselves. We are personally accountable for each and every one of them. And secondly, they do not maintain themselves. So we're not going to take time as a group tonight, 10 minutes of quiet time with the Christian equivalent of Kenny G music playing. We're going to ask you to just take this away and spend some time in prayer and go to the Lord and do that on some quiet time. So what comments or questions might you have about the assessment itself?
Jackie, I'm wondering, we used to do something like this as a group back years ago. We had a little different format for it, but the concept was very similar. We used to do this as an accountability test to each other. We'd share the results with each other. Have you ever used it as an accountability tool? Or have you always just used this as a private reflection sort of tool?
I'm chuckling only because, Bob, whenever I've done this in a public setting, Christian or otherwise, I always preface it, if we're doing a debrief in a group, I always preface it with, please do not share your scores.
Okay.
And to your point, 9 times out of 10, people share their scores. So I don't know if it's because people have a need to talk about it. I'm not 100% sure why that happens. I try to structure it so that people's scores are kept confidential, and they know they don't have to share them, but I think people like to share them. I think they want to talk. So no, I have never personally used it in a group setting for that purpose of shared accountability, but let me tell you how I do debrief it. Since I tell them I don't want them to share their scores, what do I want them to do? What I ask people to do is, in general, please tell the group, without referring to any specific variable, please tell us how your 3s and 4s got to be 3s and 4s. Are you with me, everyone?
Mhm.
Yes.
So how did your 3s and 4s get to be 3s and 4s? So
Hi.
what might you think some typical answers would be?
By sharing your 1 and 2s with the group before you got to the 3s and 4s. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm going to share my numbers because that was this whole message was really about going, if the right people are in the room, you want to start sharing. But anyways.
So what might you think some typical things would be? What would come up? What would people tell us about how their 3s and 4s got to be there?
I found that people often get into crisis, and that just spurs them to take some action on something that is very painful in their lives.
Okay, so there's the principle. I did something, right?
Yeah.
I took action. What else might come up? My 3s and 4s got to be there because.
I mean, perseverance and just
Perseverance.
continuous improvement.
Yes, continuous improvement. What else might come up? What might come up in a Christian setting?
Prayer.
Prayer.
Yeah.
Right? Accountability. I often have people say, good luck. And then I have the opportunity to say, I personally don't believe in luck, but good luck with that. So that's how I use this, so that I can then say, I make a list, right? Keep it visible. And I say to everyone, see what you see here. This is how your 1s and 2s are going to become 3s and 4s. There's no magic here. We're going to have to set priorities. We're going to have to commit time, money, and energy. We're going to need to work hard. We're going to need to stay accountable. And in a Christian setting, we always have the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and we have to add thanksgiving, because we don't go anywhere without the Lord. So this exercise helps give people a reality check, but it also helps to give them hope. So as much as I ask people, don't share your stuff, they share their stuff. And I ask them, tell everyone in this room how your 3s and 4s got to be there. And then we just remind ourselves that it's not going to be anything other than commitment, prayer, hard work, admitting mistakes, holding yourself accountable. It gives people hope to know that we don't need to stay there. The other thing I use this for, so the title happens on this page to be goal indicator self-assessment, is also when we're focusing more on life balance than specifically just on goals or bringing a sane person to work. Tonight, we're talking about bringing your best self to work. And when you work for a boss who has a balanced life, you're not under that constant stress that somebody's going to come in and be dumping their stress all over you because they're managing things outside of work. so that they can bring a calm professional into the workplace. So the other thing that we can use this for in terms of life balance is, again, admitting that at certain seasons of life, some of these are going to loom larger than others. Bob, you used the word crisis, right? If you have a health crisis, things pretty well stop in some of these other areas. We're going to need to address them. Or if we realize that we're losing our friends because we're not paying attention to them, we might want to move that social one up the ladder a little bit and start spending time renewing relationships, repenting where needed and mending fences where needed if we have a lot of unforgiveness or unresolved stuff going on. So this is also a good check to say, not only what needs attention, but am I looking at all of them on a regular basis to assess where resources may need to be reallocated, for lack of a better word. It gives us a big picture look at our life right now. And then it is good to go back and say, how am I doing? Am I moving up this ladder? Am I glorifying God more and more in these areas of my life? Or am I not paying attention and they're slipping? Yeah.
I love the idea about sharing the 3s and 4s and how they got to be that way, because I think that in a team setting, that can lead to people who are potentially mentors, or somebody might seek out their advice. So I could see a lot of connections being made there. And
Yes.
again, just showing vulnerability, transparency, willingness to share, all that. It's a really, really clever way to get that discussion going and the relationships built.
Thank you. And also, Art, I have gotten some incredibly creative responses. I mean, many of us, I would assume, in the consulting arena, organizational development or management consultants or whatever, do what we do because we're constantly being amazed by people and how they think and what they have to bring to the party. I just hear some incredible things. And some people do want to share a little bit more detail about some of the struggles that they have overcome, or special people in their life that came alongside them at very hard times. Stories are just amazing. So nothing is this neat and clean and linear and, straight line and boxed and whatever. It's just an example of a way to get us thinking about, Lord, am I glorifying you with my life? Am I moving forward? Am I listening to you? And am I following through with what I'm hearing and being asked to do?
I'm so glad you stressed the whole concept of balance too, because that was one of the things when we did this exercise before in our group, we used to look at it as a wheel to make sure that there wasn't
Exactly.
something that was way out of whack, because as you said, that if you have some that are 3s and 4s and some that remain 1s or 2s for a long period of time, your whole life is going to suffer, because those 1s and 2s are going to impact everything else. I think that the whole idea of you need to make sure that you're paying attention across the board is so vital to maintaining your health, because 3s and 4s will deteriorate if you've got 1s and 2s tugging on them.
Yes. And I like the wheel presentation even better, excuse me, because somebody might think that this is a reflection of my personal rank ordering of things.
Right.
So I need to remember to tell people these are not in any particular order. You might number them from 1 to 8 or whatever, if you choose to. I'm just proposing as a overview that these are some life variables that we could use for discussion. Well, let's move on to our last handout, maintaining credibility in relationships. Are they all on there, Don? Because I don't have a hard copy of this one with me. Thank you. Okay, so again, I'd like to just give you an overview of this particular handout, and then at your leisure, have fun with this. Credibility, especially I think for Christians, is super, super important. And I'm giving a very simple definition that you can trust people to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to keep doing it. You can trust them to do it, and you're going to trust them to keep doing it. And that's my simple definition of credibility. What a relief it is to work with people who have credibility. We all have enough to do. We need to trust that people are going to do what they say they're going to do, and they need to trust that we're going to do our part. So I think this is absolutely crucial in wanting to work with people That's one of the ways I position this, is that sometimes we work with people because we have to. When we exhibit these behaviors, people work with us because they want to. And that's a really big difference. So we're not going to go through these one by one, but everything that you see down the left column, they all start with I, again, to reinforce that personal accountability, but they are all things that I believe should be valued, which takes us to the do well or will do well column. When people see the way that's worded, they think, you know, are you commanding me to do this well? No, I am just a person suggesting to you that if you don't value this particular variable, you are not going to ever do it well. You have to value it. So my biggest challenge to people is when you read through these, if there's something here that you don't understand the value of, that's what I would want to spend time talking about in a workshop as an example. So let's just take a couple of these as an example. I prepare well for all customers, whether it's a performance appraisal for an internal customer, someone that reports to you, or an external customer. Are you prepared so that when that transaction or conversation or meeting starts, does that person feel like they are not an interruption, they're not an imposition, they feel valued? So if people don't understand the importance of preparation, we need to talk about that, because if they're not doing it well now, they're not ever going to do it well because they don't understand the value of it. So I'm not going to repeat that. Everyone understand where I'm going with that?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I ask people to read down these. Do you do it well now? And well doesn't mean perfect. Well means, do you do it most of the time in most situations? It's top of mind. Let me define that as do well. We're aware of it, we value it, we work hard toward it, and our pattern is to do it well most of the time. Or we don't have a pattern of exhibiting that particular behavior well most of the time. So if I value it, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to set a goal around it. So preparing well for customers, expressing appreciation, being a knowledgeable referral source, speaking positively about people, evaluating my work for quality outcomes. I think that we need to be, you know, our number one quality control person. I need to be able to leave a session that perhaps I did as a consultant, or if you're a manager and you've had a lot of difficult relationship issues that day, when you walk out that door, do you take time to say, these are the things I did well today, and these are the things I did not do well today. What was the result of my behavior? And be the first one to have that honesty and that openness and that vulnerability to say, ooh, I got to go back in tomorrow morning and address this first thing when I walk in. So again, looking for those patterns. Using the mission and values as guidelines to make decisions and solve problems. I think this gives employees, teams, organizations great security and the ability to take a deep breath when I walk in the door in the morning, when I know that the mission and values are going to guide decisions and solve problems. I call this having fewer negative surprises. A personal story that I can share just in it's my 34th year, I think, of Clarion Call. Have had my own consulting company for a very long time now. One of the questions I learned to ask before I took on a client, and it probably cost me some jobs along the way because it might have been too pointed of a question, but I would say to the leader or the decision maker before a project would start, are you willing to share with me what, I'll just call it bad behavior for the sake of conversation tonight. Are you willing to share with me what bad behavior the organization is allowing right now? And I would give them lots of time to think about that, because if I'm going to represent you, right, and be the cheerleader and go do your management training or your individual coaching or whatever, when I'm carrying your banner, I don't want people looking at me like she's pretty naive. That's not really what goes on here. I just need to know the truth. So I still might take the client, I still might carry the banner, I still might work behind the scenes to help them change. But we all need to come to grips with what are we allowing that does not look like that mission and values statement. Yeah. I love this last one. I respond confidently, or I get help or information. Talk about building trust. When people, the old fake it till you make it thing just does not fly. I don't want to work with anyone that doesn't have the respect for me and my time to tell me the truth that they cannot help me, or that they're not the best person to help me. We're not all equipped to do everything. If I cannot respond confidently, I need to not respond, or I need to respond with, I cannot help you right now. So maybe it's a timing issue, or maybe it's, I can't help you because I'm not competent to help you. But we need to be honest, and we need to respect that people deserve quality the first time. So without reading through all of these, any comments or questions on behaviors that lend to a credible reputation and people working with you because they want to and not because they have to?
Jackie, have you ever had anyone use this as like a 360 tool, or they've shared it with others and asked others to rate them in these different components of their behavior?
I certainly give my clients the freedom to do that. I mean, I respect that they respect my copyrighted material, but I'm pretty free with it.
Mhm.
I want people, and you would find many of these, Bob, on many 360 assessment things. There's only so many ways to describe management behavior. So I'm sure we've seen a lot of these on different kinds of assessments, but sure, it could be used that way. Any assessment that you see, I am always encouraging people to ask other people for feedback. I think a lot of people are nervous about doing that, or they have these preconceived notions, or they make assumptions about how people feel about their leadership or about their ability to be a good teammate. I think most people are willing to tell you if you ask them, and they believe that you want it and that you just listen. That's the biggest one, right? Just listen and do not defend. Speaking about 360s, I'll just add a little bit something right here. When I have facilitated 360s in organizations, so Bob, say it was you, that you were the pickle in the middle, right? Getting the feedback from your boss, your peers, your direct reports. I give that person, sometimes I give that person the option of not having me as a facilitator in their feedback meeting, because I believe that they are non-defensive and they're a good listener. But occasionally I've had clients where I know that neither of those things were true. They were highly defensive and they were not a good listener. So I would impose myself, for lack of a better word, into the process to say, please allow me to facilitate your feedback meeting, because I did not have hope that they would listen non-defensively, where people would continue to talk to them and clarify why they rated them the way they did. It's a very tricky process. 360
certainly is.
evaluation, very, very tricky. I personally love it. I think it's a fantastic tool. I've lived through it. I have facilitated others. The very first time I was the pickle in the middle for a 360, one of my people cried. They could not give the feedback. She was very young, a very inexperienced trainer. I loved her. She was great. She was very talented, but she just could not get past the paradigm that she was supposed to give her boss feedback. So I excused her from the meeting. Her name was Carol. I said, Carol, really, I do not want this to cause you a heart attack. I said, and by the way, these other 3 people will more than make up for you. So don't worry about it. They were very assertive, and I'm still friends with all 3 of those people 30 years later. So you can tell we had a really good relationship. But yes, back to your point, you can use this for 360, sure.
I've used 360 sometimes anonymously, where, to encourage people to give their true feelings, you say, well, I would operate as a facilitator, receive the 360s back and filter them for the pickle in the middle, so that they would not, there wouldn't be any retribution, and hopefully they would get as honest feedback as possible, rather than be the people providing feedback be worried about, being bitten by that.
We probably could have another 1-hour conversation on the pros and cons of anonymous 360s.
Yeah.
I will add that I was very blessed to be on the only high performing team that I was on when I was on the inside of organizations. There was no question we were going to do it with full disclosure. we
Mhm.
wouldn't have done it any other way, but that was an extremely rare, high performing team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackie, one quick question.
Yes.
I could probably assume what it means, but can you comment quickly on this one? I introduce myself and others to customers.
Yes, because this came from my old bank days, Art, when there was a lot of status and a lot of bad behavior. And you could be in a group of people, and if you were an officer, right, if you were an AVP or a VP or whatever, you would get introduced. And if you weren't an officer, you would be in the same group, but no one would, graciously extend their hand to you to say that this is Mary Smith. They would introduce Bob and Robert and Sally, and they wouldn't introduce you. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I think
Gotcha.
that's an old carryover from a hot button.
Mhm.
We need to introduce ourselves. We need to extend our hand, and it's a little awkward when you're excluded to extend your hand, but I think you should do it anyway.
Good, thank you.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
people want names. Yeah, people, and that's a good way. We're not taking names. We want names. We want to personalize that transaction.
Mm.
Anything else on here? Anything for clarification? I know we're winding up.
It's very good. I think it's a great checklist just to, run through and just mentally continually, again, sharpen the saw in terms of where maybe am I falling off a little bit. We
Yes.
all have checklists for all of our
Yeah.
workshops or, things we're going to do and whatever else. This is a great mental checklist just in terms of our overall interactions. Love
Yes.
it.
I really like to emphasize that, it's headed up by the word behavior. What are the things that you see and hear? Because when we make even, again, we're not here to do performance evaluations tonight, but the things that maybe all of us have seen on performance evaluations that are so not helpful to people because they're not, included in behavioral terms. All they do is make people defensive and second guess themselves and decrease their confidence. But when we're talking about a behavior, I know if I've seen it or heard it, or if I've spoken it or done it. It just gives us a baseline of clarity that we can talk about when things are helpful or not helpful. So we're not talking about people being good with people. How does that translate into what I see and hear that leads me to the evaluation that they are good with people? So then I know what behaviors to repeat. Right? Because the next person might think I'm not so good with people. Yeah. Anything else? So all of these are to help us bring our best self to work. A lot to think about. And if there's anything else, you can give me a call or shoot me a text or an email. But I've really enjoyed being with all of you tonight.
Thank you, Jackie, so
Thank you
much.
so
We
much.
really appreciate it. Sharing your expertise, and obviously you take a great deal of enjoyment in teaching other people about these things. So
I do.
we're so appreciative of your willingness to help us, and we'll hope that many other people will be helped through the recordings on this. I think we've pretty much covered all of the questions. We have a nice intimate group, so I would encourage anyone who's listening to this by recording to send their questions to our email. I'm going to just display that here if I can share the screen.
And Jackie, what's your website again?
I don't have a website. I have an email, Jackie Stroh 2@aol.com.
Okay, thank you.
It's on our website too. Her email address is on our website. So this recording of this event will be posted on our website. It'll be posted on the CBB Facebook page. It'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. So the raw version will go up probably tomorrow. Don's usually very, very quick about posting it. And there will be an edited version that will go up in a few days' time as soon as I have a chance to get to it and add a few goodies to it. So the information on the screen there is how to contact us. If you should have any further questions on this, you can send them to info@christianbusinessboard.com, or you can contact Jackie directly on her email address on our website, or as she just stated. You can visit us at our Facebook page at Christian Business Board or on our website at christianbusinessboard.com. And we just really appreciate everyone who is going to watch this in the future. And we appreciate, Jackie, the fact that you've given up your time and talents to be able to come and share with us tonight. I do want to say that we are going to have another event here next month in March, on March 20th, I believe. Yeah, it's March 20th. We're going to have Lois Ratz, who is the founder and president of Ready to Grow. She is actually from Canada, and she's also a director of our partner organization, the Canadian Christian Business Federation. So we're grateful to have her next month talking about empowerment in business. So please join us for that event, and we will be doing some publicity about that, and that will also go up on our website, more details about that, and the registration link will go up as soon as it's available. So we just thank everyone for being here tonight, and just want to turn it over to my good friend Dominic here and allow him to close us off here. And we just look forward to being able to absorb all this information, and well, I'm sure people will have questions for you, Jackie, so we'll be talking in the future, and hopefully at some point we can have you back for another conversation about some of these things.
My pleasure.
Well, yes, well, let's just close. Jackie, thank you again so much. Yeah, CBB, Christian Business Board, is a work in progress, and we just love any feedback, anything you can give us so we can help develop greater resources, and any topics that you might have that we can help along the way. We would love that feedback, and you can again go to our website at christianbusinessboard.com or email us at info@christianbusinessboard.com. Also, I would encourage anybody, this was just such a great event tonight, and once you go to that website, you could always share this link with anybody you know consistently uses these resources. You can go to our website. We have about 20 events on there of unbelievable leadership events that we have posted over the last couple of years. So you can definitely take advantage of that and use them any way you want. So again, yes, March 20th, a Monday night, again, 7 p.m. We have Lois Ratz, and she will be speaking on empowerment in the Christian business. So thank you again. God bless you. And we hopefully will hear from each and every one of you as we go through this month. God bless.
Thank you, Jackie.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Jackie.